Well, hello there. We're back again for our 45 minutes of purpose, our Wednesday night Bible study. My name is Andre Sparks. In case you've never joined us, I'm the senior pastor slash senior servant leader at 45th Street Baptist Church. We're a Baptist congregation in the East Lake community of Birmingham, Alabama. We've been so pleased to be able to come to you in this medium while you're getting yourself together and settling in for 45 minutes of Bible study. I'll let you know now. I hope you've got your Bible. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. And we're going to be talking about a topic tonight that I believe is going to be tough for some people, but that's okay. We can talk about tough things and learn from them. Before we get into the actual Bible study, because this is our the church's time to get together and talk, I want to ask you, if you will, continue to be in prayer for some of our church members. Please be in prayer for our own Sister Evelyn Gardner. She lost her sister-in-law. She was called home to be with the Lord. So please be prayerful for her. Also, I'd ask you, if you would, to be prayerful for Deacon Walter Miles, who had to be rehospitalized. Make sure you pray for him. Please pray for our own Deacon Walter Wright as he recovers and continues to recuperate. Even though we're in the midst of this situation with this pestilence in our community, and life goes on. So I know those are things that are serious and some even sad. But let's celebrate one of our church members too. Today is the 84th birthday of our own Sister Mary Cole. If you get a chance, give her a call and celebrate with her. Wish her a happy birthday. She's in great spirits today, and we're so thankful that we got a chance to share with her. She's grateful. She told me today that she doesn't have a whole lot of extended biological family left anymore, and so that means that church family is even more important. And we get to a life where that's really, really, really important. So please be prayerful for her. Happy birthday to Miss Cole, 84 years old. Now let's go into and talk a little bit about this Bible study tonight. Like I said, it's going to be tough for some people. Tonight we're going to be talking about rejection, how to respond to rejection. And we're going to continue this discussion. We're going to have this discussion in a continued study of a family, the Bible. The family we're talking about is the family of Jacob. We've been talking about Jacob for a little while now. We talked about how he found his wife. We found about, first of all, how he got into it with his brother. He had to leave town, just by way of recap, running because his brother threatened to kill him. That's going to be relevant tonight. And then we talked about how he had to run to live with his mother's brother, Laban. And he stayed there with his mother's brother, Laban, and ended up marrying both of Laban's daughters. Laban tricked him. That's relevant in this lesson tonight. And after 20 years, he got out of town. Here he is again, Jacob, getting out of town under cover of darkness because he doesn't know how his uncle is going to deal with him. He leaves and they end up having a confrontation 10 days later when his uncle catches up with him. And then immediately on the heels of having that confrontation with his uncle, he has a confrontation and a reunion with his brother, Esau, the one he had tricked 20 years earlier. They ended up having a confrontation, and how he dealt with that was a case study in how we can make amends with siblings and friends when we have not treated them fairly. Immediately after his situation with his brother, Jacob's been in it. He ends up, in the midst of it, he ends up wrestling with an angel of God all night long. And because of what God had on his life, he wrestled with that angel all night long. And the angel ended up breaking his hip, knocking his hip out of socket because he wouldn't give up. Jacob wouldn't give up. And he told the angel, I'll wrestle you and I won't quit until you bless me. The angel wouldn't bless him until he broke him. That's a story right there. That's a lesson for some folk who keep waiting for a blessing, but you want a blessing in all of you, all of your arrogance, all of who you are, all of your awesomeness. But God can't use you under those circumstances. He wants you to be broken and be fit for what he has for you. And so he broke him. And when he broke him, He renamed him. And so Jacob, the Jacob we talk about, was renamed Israel. And Israel is the foundation of this story today because Israel ended up having 12 sons. And those sons, those 12 sons, end up being the 12 heads of the nation of Israel. And that's what we're getting into now, the early days of those 12 sons and how it was in Jacob's house. I can tell you that there is something in this family line that creates turmoil. And it's the same thing that's in some other folks' family line. When you start picking one child over another, it creates problems. When you start having favorites, it creates problems, and those problems can last for decades. Not only does it problems, it creates resentment, sibling rivalry, creates problems when you're young, and those problems continue into adulthood. That's exactly what happened in this family. Now, one would have thought after Jacob went through what in his home that he would have changed his mind or changed his way of doing things when he had his own children. Not so. Not so. Just didn't happen. Sometimes things just get in you, and it's just the way you do it. But somebody's got to come on and break the cycle. But I can tell you right now, it didn't happen here. So in chapter 37, we get into a story that's probably very familiar to some of you who've been Bible studiers. And it's dealing with one of his sons. In fact, I'll step out and say this. This son became the most famous of Jacob's sons. His name was Joseph. And when I start reading these verses, I want to read a few of them for you. You'll quickly understand why he became the most famous. When I say famous, I mean historically famous. He had to go through a whole lot, but in the end, there's a reason why you'll know he's the famous. So let me start reading that verse 1. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. And these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. They were his father's maid servants because his father's other two wives were Rachel and Leah. And Rachel was Joseph's mother. She had two sons, but Joseph was the elder. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Underline that. If you're keeping up with your Bible, you're taking notes, underline verse 2. He brought unto his father their evil report. Verse 3 says, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children. That right there, you ought to underline. Somehow that should not even be in the Bible, but it is. Somehow it shouldn't be in our families, but it is. And it's creating problems everywhere you see something like that. Because this is why he loved him more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him, that being the father, made Joseph a coat of many colors. Now, if you've been in Sunday school or in church any part of your life, you know the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. And that's why he got it, because he was his father's favorite son, favorite child, and because he was the son of his father's old age. And so his father doted on him. He was the right age when his father, his father was the right age to be able to spend time with him when he was born. He was probably beyond the time of being able to go to the field. And so his son was around him all the time and helped him. And he simply loved him. Not only did he love him under those circumstances, he also loved him because he was the first child, watch this, that he had with his favorite wife. That was the wife that he had waited for 14 years to marry, Rachel. So here he is, the child of his favorite wife, is now the child that he favors most out of all 12 of them. Now think about that. What does that do for a family? Psychologically, how does that affect the family? Because you and I both know that a child can tell when they're receiving special treatment. A child can tell when they've got someone's eye. And most children I know reach an age when they know how to play on those emotions that those adults have. They know how to dig it in just a little bit. They know how to look at them and talk to them and the things to do, and they can take advantage of it. And I can tell you this, just like that child who is favored knows how it feels to be favored, the child who is not favored also knows how it feels to not be a special child. They know that early on. They understand how it feels to not be selected, to not be given the special treatment. And these emotions grow up in us and they create problems for us as we go along. Sometimes they create emotional issues for children because they feel like they're never good enough because their parents never treated them that way. Now, you might be sitting there squirming a little bit now. I don't know which side of this discussion you're on. I don't know if you're the parent who may not have known enough about parenting to let it be known that you had a special child. One child was more special than the others if you had more than one. Or maybe you were the child in the family who was treated special. On holidays, you got one more gift. Maybe your gift was a little bit more expensive. And while everybody else may have gotten something they asked for, you always got exactly what you wanted. Children know how to pay attention to that. Or maybe it was such that all the other children had to share a room, but you had your own room. Or maybe when you were going somewhere, everybody else had to wear hand-me-downs, but you always got a chance to wear brand new clothes. Maybe it's the fact that you got on to go to all the trips you wanted to go on, and the other children may not have been able to do it. You may have been that child who received all those benefits. Or you may have been the child who watched a sibling receive all those benefits. Either way it goes, I bet if I ask for you to raise your hands, if I can see you right now, some of you I can, but I bet you tell me you know how it feels from some perspective. It doesn't feel good. Oh, it feels good to Joseph for a little while that he's the favorite child. But Joseph didn't only have the knowledge that he was the favorite child of his father out of all those boys. That had to be hard. I can imagine that there were some chores that went undone by Joseph because his father wasn't going to make him go out there and do too much heavy lifting. And then that created resentment among his brothers because they wanted to know why they had to work so hard. And then to top it all off, as if it wasn't enough, here his father puts the cherry on the favoritism cake by getting him a special garment. The Bible says that it was a coat of many colors. But I need you to understand the context of this now. This would have been something that identified him as special in his father's eye, as unique among the rest of the boys. He would have stood out among them. And while it might have made him feel good, can I tell you something else? It also made him a target. How do I know that? Let me read just a little bit more, and you tell me if you think it made him a target. And his brethren saw, verse 4, and his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren. Watch this. They hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Now, this is Moses writing this, and he says, because of the favorite treatment that Joseph received, he was hated by his brothers, and they couldn't speak peaceably to him. They were always arguing with him because he was, now watch this, let's go back up here again, and let me put this whole thing into context. We'll go back to verse 2. And in verse 2, it says that Joseph was 17 and was feeding the flock with his brethren, and he was with them in the field. And then the last line says, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Watch out now. So not only was he the favorite child, he was also a tattletale. Whatever they did in the field, and it was bad, he came back and told dad about it. They hated him because he reported everything. It's not enough that daddy treats you better. It's not enough that daddy doesn't make you work as hard as we do. It's not enough that when the food is passed out, you get top choice of whatever comes. But then when we go out in the field, on a day when we don't work as hard as maybe somebody thinks we should have, before we can get back to the house, you've already told daddy what we've done wrong. And so we got to get not only not his favorite love, but we got to get his wrath. Under those circumstances, who wouldn't think negatively about a sibling? And parents set that up when they create favoritism. But Jacob had it in his blood. He learned it from his mother. His mother had favorite, just like his father did. Isaac had Esau as his favorite, and his mother had Jacob as her favorite. And so he's learned these habits. Picks and choices can create division and problems in the family. And then he comes straight out of that household into his father-in-law's household. He learned in his mama's house to be deceitful when he tricked his brother out of his birthright. He took it to his father-in-law's household, to his uncles who became his father-in-law's household, and there his uncle was deceitful, so his mama was deceitful and showed favoritism. His uncle was deceitful and showed favoritism. And now he's taking it into his own home and he's showing favoritism and is also being untrue to his boys because he won't let them just be who they are. He's got to pick the one that he likes. Can I tell you something? And I hope you'll take this with me. Some children need more attention than other children. Because of what life brings them, some of them need more of a parent's physical presence in order to make it successfully in life. That's not a bad thing. What becomes a problem is when a parent intentionally shows favoritism over another, because the parent who is showing a child who may be developmentally delayed, who may be emotionally delayed, who may have some physical handicaps, everyone expects that child is going to get more time and attention from the parent. And guess what? If you're raising the child in a balanced home, their siblings will understand that because you will teach them how to interact with their sibling who needs more of everybody's attention. That's a balanced approach. It's when all the children function fine and you choose one to elevate, not because of age, not because of ability, but because of your picks and chooses, because of your likes. You elevate one above the rest of them for your attention. That creates problems. And that's what's happened here. Now, we come to find out later that Joseph is a special child. He's special because God made him special. He's special because God put something in him that was special. But prior to learning this, Jacob, his father, had already picked him out as his favorite. So let's look and see what God has put in him. In verse 5, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren. And look at this. When he told it to his brethren, verse 5 says, and they hated him even more. So not only did they hate him because daddy picked him, they hated him because he had a dream and dared to open his mouth and share it with them. Be careful who you tell your dreams to. Be careful who you share them with. Some people are helpers and keepers of your dream, and other people will try to snuff out your dream because they're jealous. They don't understand. Why would God give that to you? Just like his brothers didn't understand. Why would daddy give you this coat? They also don't understand why God would give. And because of that, they want to suppress all of it because they only look at what you get as a mirror to what they did not get. And that's a problem. And so verse 6 says, and he said unto them, here I pray, this dream which I have dreamed. And the dream is interesting because he said, for we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obeisance to my sheaf. Now, let me explain that to you. Make sure you understand that. When he said made obeisance to my sheaf, that means bow down. So my sheaf, the one that represented Joseph, stood straight up. And the other sheaves around him, representing his brothers, bowed down to him. Oh, my Lord, why in the world would he tell his brothers this? They already hate him because daddy loves him. They already hate him because of the coat. They already hate him because God has given him a dream. And when the dream is interpreted, they are worse off than they were before he told them the dream, because now he's predicting and saying, you're going to end up serving me. I'll be your master. Watch this. Verse 8 says, and his brethren said unto him, shalt thou reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And look, here it is again, from verse 4 to verse 8, the writer put, and they hated him yet 3 times. They hated him. They hated him. Could not stand to see him walking. That's how much they hated him. And one would say, can that happen in a family? Absolutely. Absolutely. Brothers have been jealous of, against brothers since the beginning of time, since the first family was created. People are people. The fact that they share a bloodline does not change the fact that they hate one another sometimes. It's hate. Can I tell you this? If you want to get that kind of flesh looking and walking in your house, out of your house, then you need to put God in your house. You need to let the Lord lead you and teach you and show you how to deal with your children. And some people think that because you raise boys and girls, you can raise them completely different. I gotta tell you, in this day and time, you got to be very careful. You got to make sure that you strengthen each of your children, that you expose them to the things that they need, and that you allow them to flower and bloom to their best potential, and that you don't inhibit them. One thing I've learned as a parent, and this has been so very helpful to me once I found out, and I can't tell you that I woke up young with this wisdom, but I did walk into it. I learned that I've got to not let my fears be a part of my parenting. Now, that's hard because a parent's job is to protect their children. But many times when our children come to us with things that we've not experienced and we haven't participated in, we respond in fear as opposed to responding in faith. They may have been given something from God that God never intended for us to participate in. We need to be able to support those things and not say, just because we haven't participated in it, don't do that. Not say, just because we're fearful of some things, don't do that. We need to walk with them as much as we can and support them in their dreams. And I found too often that most of the time we operate in our own comfort zone. And when we operate in our comfort zone, our fears manifest themselves in our children. And I can tell you, your child has something different to do for the Lord than you do. They have something to do that you never considered. That's why the Lord has given it to them. But whatever it is, it's going to be kingdom enhancing. It's going to be a blessing to you, but you may not understand it at the beginning. You still need to be able to support your child. As long as it's not something that's going to physically harm them, emotionally harm them, you need to ask the Lord to give you the patience to help them get to that place. So here we go. Joseph has, back to the story in the scripture, Joseph has had this dream that he shared with his brothers that has made them now hate him 3 times more than they hated him anyway. And then comes verse 9, and he dreams a second dream. And sometimes you say in these situations, Joseph, just don't go to sleep no more. Because every time you wake up, you telling us how much better you're going to be than we are. I can't imagine how hostile the environment was. And let me tell you this, he probably stayed around his daddy a lot because he knew his brothers didn't like him. What did that do? That helped his daddy love him even more because he was always underfoot and helping him. But it was probably the safest place for him to be most of the time because his brothers probably talked to him so hard. But his daddy would not have known this was going on because the boys respected dad enough not to talk to him like that in his presence. You know how people do. They call him throwing rocks and hiding your hand. They won't let you see what's going on. But a time came when he had another dream. Verse 9 says, and behold, it was not only his brethren in the dream, but now his parents are. And the symbol is this. He said, I had a dream. He said, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. In this instance, the sun and the moon would have been the celestial orbs that represent mama and daddy, my parents. And then, of course, the 11 stars would have been his brother. The sun, the moon, and all the stars are going to bow down and pay obeisance to him. Even when he says this, his father, who loves him mightily, knows, boy, you shouldn't be talking like this in front of your brothers. This thing that's going to get you favor with them. And he said to him in verse 10, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and your mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? And his brothers, look at this now, look at this. Verse 11 says, and his brothers envied him, and his father, it says in scripture in the King James Version, observed the saying. But what it means is he pondered this because he knew this was not a healthy thing for his brother. He knew something had been set in motion that was going to result in something negative. And there it goes. Verse 12 turns right around there. Resentment grows to a place where it becomes action. Yeah, Joseph grew up in a house full of resentment toward his favoritism that he was shown, his gifts that he was given, his abilities that God blessed him with, and all of that resentment has now turned into action. A plot starts to develop. Verse 12 said his brothers, I'm just going to paraphrase this as we go through these next verses because they're long. But verse 12 starts a story where the brothers go out to the father's flock, some distance from the home. And his father Israel, you see that in verse 13, told Joseph, your brothers are in this distant place. Come and I will send them unto thee. And he said unto him, I'm ready to go. So he left. And he told him to go out to the brothers. Now it doesn't take long. In verse 18, when it says, and when they saw him afar off, in other words, they're out there with the flock, doing what they do as shepherds, and they see Joseph coming over the hill. You can imagine what that conversation starts. Oh, here he comes. All he wants to do is see what we're doing so he can run back and tell dad. All he wants to do is report on us, snitch on us. And so they start to create what's called a conspiracy, a plan. All of them are tired of him. Verse 20 says, come now, therefore, and let us slay him. In modern parlance, today, this would be called a conspiracy to commit murder. All 11 of them are plotting to kill their brother. Now, one would say, well, all 11 of them can't do it. Can I tell you? People find out the hard way in the criminal justice system that if you're part of the group that helped makes the plan, you can get caught up in a conspiracy even if you don't do the deed yourself, because you were part of the planning process. All of these brothers are just as guilty as the other of conspiracy. And conspiracy in current law is its own crime. You can go to jail for conspiracy to break the law. And that's exactly what happened in this instance. They created a conspiracy and were about to go through with it. Watch this now. How does it get to this place? We read in the paper all day long. Brother kills brother. Son kills father. You and I both know, we're mature enough to know and understand that those situations don't simply develop overnight. That there's been talking and struggling. There's been action going on for a long time in that household, and it's not been healthy. And one would say, well, what do you do under those circumstances? I want to tell you this right now. If you know of a situation like that going on in somebody's house, if you see it developing, you need to be praying mightily for them. You need to be praying that the Lord would intercede and that he would send someone in who can help bring peace, bring understanding back to that situation. It's a hard thing to watch that develop when you know something is happening badly. I bet some of you, if we were in a physical location right now, we'd be asking these questions to you. And as a chat room, if you have it, have the ability, we got someone taking notes, and you can ask questions. Some of you have had this to happen in your own home, in your own family. Some of you are separated from family members right now because you're still holding on to resentments. I'm not saying that you're not justified. I'm not casting aspersions on how you feel now. All I can ask you this question is, who's benefiting from y'all being apart? That same person who was horrible when you were younger has also grown up, may have regrets that they haven't figured out how to yet express. But if you got the love of Christ in you, if you got the love of God in you, you have a responsibility to make amends first with your family. People always want to say that they are in good stead with the Lord in heaven. They say they have a great vertical relationship, but they're struggling with the horizontal relationships, the people next to them every day. Yeah, what's the hold up right now? Pick up the phone, call somebody, start a conversation. You don't even have to talk about the issue that separated you. You can simply call and say, how you doing? Don't wait until somebody's on their deathbed. Don't wait until you are in that position. Don't wait until something tragic happens. Simply call and start a conversation with the person. Who knows what a blessing it'll be in your life moving forward. Well, in this situation with Joseph and his brothers, it came to a head. When they saw him coming over the hill, they conspired to harm him. Not only did they conspire to harm him, they said that they were going to kill him, slay him, is what they said. That's what verse 20 said. Not only will we slay him, let's throw him into some pit. And then people will simply say that an evil beast has killed him. But Reuben, one of the elder brothers, the eldest brother, heard it and said, this is what happened. Reason stepped in for a moment. And he said, let us not kill him. Verse 21. In other words, he didn't want his brother's blood on his hands. And he said unto all of them, verse 22, exactly that, shed no blood. But he did agree that Joseph was a pain and something needed to happen to him. Now he was mad and he was good enough to stop him from killing him, but he still wanted to get rid of him because look, of all the ones who probably got the short end of the stick with him as the oldest son, the eldest son, he would have been the one working harder. His daddy would have probably called his name more than anybody's name. Joseph was probably the pain in his behind, as they say. You know, he was the one who he struggled with. And so he said, let's not kill him, but let's get rid of him. And so they said, let's put him in this cistern, in this pit, in this well that has no water in it. And let's leave him there. And that's what they did. They grabbed him when he came. Can you imagine the dreamer whistling as he came? And he comes in to say, Daddy told me to come see what's going on with y'all. Before he knew it, he had been snatched up, placed in the pit. And he's placed in the pit. And apparently, based on the reading of this, while he's in the pit, a caravan of traders comes along. And I don't know if Reuben was occupied or if he had stepped away for a second. But if you continue on through this chapter, around verse 26, you'll find that they decide, instead of leaving him in the pit, watch this now, evil knows no bound. Not only have these brothers who hate him so bad that they want to kill him, but they said, if we're not going to kill him, we can at least make some money off of him. And so they turn around, and instead of leaving him in the pit, they decide they're going to sell him to the caravan into slavery. And that's exactly what they did. And one of them, Judah, said to them, verse 26, what profit is it if we slay him and conceal his blood? In other words, we can't get no money out of this situation. So let's sell it to the Ishmaelites and let not our hand be upon him. In other words, we can solve our problem. He'll be gone. We make a little money from it, and we can come up with a story to tell daddy, which they did. They dipped his favorite coat, the one they hated so much, in the blood of a kid that they killed. They probably took pride in dipping that coat in blood because they hated the coat anyway. And they knew it was so distinctive that none of them could wear it back without the father knowing that something had happened. And so they took the robe and they dipped it in blood. They sold their brother. Think about this now. How much hate do you have to have in your heart to treat your own flesh and blood that way? It's got to be an awful thing. It's got to be a terrible feeling to want somebody gone that bad. And that's what they did. They sold him. And when Reuben, the one who had saved his life, came back, Joseph was not in the pit as he had left him, and he was gone. And so he goes into dad is going to kill me mode because I didn't keep up with this boy. And that's when they come up with the second part of the conspiracy, the concealment. This would be akin to the person who shoots someone. That's the first crime. They shoot someone to kill them. And then the second part, to show their guilt, is they then go and hide the gun in a place that no one can find it. That's evidence that they knew that what they had done was wrong. And the second part of this conspiracy, this conspiracy to kidnap now and commit murder, that conspiracy, is to now fix the scene so that you can conceal what you've done. And that's what they did by dipping the blood in the lamb's blood, dipping the coat in the lamb's blood. It's a horrible situation. There's no right in this. There's no good in this. The question becomes, if you find yourself in a situation like that, who's going to break the cycle in your family? Who's going to be bold enough, brave enough to change the cycle? Yeah, your mama may have done some things wrong to you. You might have been victimized by it. Your daddy may have been the most low-down person in the world. You were victimized by it. But if you know that now, if you're an adult now and you're making rational choices, you don't have to continue being a victim. You continue going on knowing that you're not a victim, you're volunteering to move forward. How long are you going to do that? Are you willing to let your children suffer that way? And maybe even teach their children? How many generations of your family are going to struggle as a result of it? I didn't come tonight to cast aspersions on anybody. I came to tell you that resentment, favoritism, these are diseases that eat families up. And they go on for generation after generation until somebody has the courage to say, we're going to stop this. Joseph's story continues. And can I tell you this? I want you to celebrate with me as I walk on. Joseph is going to go through more than just his brothers selling him into slavery. Joseph is going to go through more than just the resentment from his brothers. And the reason Joseph is going through this is because of what God has in store for him. Now, we only know this in hindsight. Joseph couldn't know this going into it, which means he had to struggle through what God allowed him to go through. But I can tell you right now, on the other end, he's going to be a blessing. God couldn't allow him to become what Israel needed in the arrogant body that he was in, the arrogant mentality. He had to let him go through something in order to put something into it. And that's what we're watching right now. He had to learn how it feels when somebody resents you Watch this. So later in his story, and we're going to get to that, he can understand the value and the benefit of forgiveness. Oh, you really know the value of forgiveness when you got a right to hate somebody. He had a right to hate his brothers. He had a right to hate them because they treated him worse than they would treat a stranger. And so when the day comes, if the day comes, that he gets the opportunity to show them some type of forgiveness, then he understands what God has done in his life. Here he is right here now. He's at the point where they have gotten him out of the family. And look at this, chapter 37 of Genesis sets the stage for the next part of our Bible study. He's been sold into slavery, and the Midianites and the Ishmaelites who got him out of that well sell him to the Midianites. And the Midianites sell him into Egypt. Watch out now. We now see how he comes from Canaan. He's come from Canaan, the promised land, back to Egypt, where the family came from. I hope you hear me now. The journey of this boy who's a dreamer has taken him from the promised land that God has told the family he would get, and sent him from the promised land at the hands of his brothers back to Egypt, where they all came from. He has been rejected mightily by his family. He was rejected because of the resentment they had. Rejection will tear up a family. And here we are right now. There is an ultimate rejection that comes when favoritism and resentment is in your family. And I want you to see how it lays the predicate for what's going to happen going forward. Look at this. The last part of verse 36 of chapter 37 says, and he was sold unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Watch out. What's going to happen next? I can't wait. We won't have Bible study next week. It'll be week after next. We're going to take a break as we normally do in the church service, in our regular monthly Bible study. We always meet first, second, and third Wednesday, and then we give you a break the last week. We're going to do that now. Between now and the time we get together again, we'll have a national holiday, Memorial Day. I hope you understand what Memorial Day means. Memorial Day is a day where we pay obeisance. We use that word a couple of times tonight, to those men and women who have served and died in defense of our country. It's not just another day to celebrate and barbecue. It's almost a sacred day from a country standpoint. Some people gave some, but there are people who gave all in defense of our country. And I hope come Memorial Day, you will celebrate the sacrifice they made so that you can have the life of freedom that we now enjoy. I want to thank you for joining in tonight. I'm so glad you came in. I know I get a little excited when I'm talking about the word of God. Well, that's not true. I get a lot excited. Why? Because God has been good to me. And anything that I can share with you that may end up helping you to walk this walk a little bit better, then I hope you will take it and run with it. I've come to you tonight. We've been very deliberate in making sure you can get this word. We did it on purpose. In fact, this has been 45 minutes of purpose. I hope it's been purposeful to you. God bless you and take care.